Greetings and salutations all, I.S. Anderson here once again, and I'm doing another book tag today, the Creatures of the Night book tag. This tag was originally created by Katie Tastic, and nobody tagged me to do it. She just said everybody else could do it. I will leave a link to her original video below if you want to check that out. And let's go ahead and just get started with the first Creature of the Night. Ooh, spooky, yes. First creature is vampires. And for vampires, I decided I would take a little bit of a non-fiction approach to it. So the book I chose for vampires is Journey into Darkness, uh, Voodoo, Ghosts, and Vampires in New Orleans. This is a book I got in New Orleans itself. It's part of a book I use for research. Why would I do research? I have 4 ideas, but I won't get into those right now. Anyway, this is a pretty interesting book. It gives a depiction of what vampires are really supposed to be, and vampires living in our world. And there are different stories, folk tales or urban legends, if you will, that take place in New Orleans around people who are apparently vampires. So it's pretty interesting. If you want to pick up a read that's kind of scary because it makes you think about things that actually are going on in the world, then definitely give that one a try. There's actually a lot of books I've read that have werewolves in them, but there's only one that I've read that centers on werewolves and only has werewolves. Those of you who saw my Nights Not Safe for Work tag will remember this one. Yep, Hour of the Beast by Michael C. Forsyth. The first chapter of the book is pretty much explained on the cover. So yeah, you take a good look at that cover and you know the very first thing that happens. Anyway, the main story actually starts when they cut about 20 years later when the woman on that cover, her 2 children go off to college together. The 2 boys are very different from each other. One is a very nerdy, a very clean-cut kid who's always studies, gets good grades, stays out of trouble. And the other kid is a very thuggish, very primitive. He's kind of hairy and likes to sleep naked, and he's very athletic and a little bit crazy. So the 2 of them are very different. And then a series of bizarre murders start happening around their campus. And yes, eventually they do find out that the cause of this is werewolves. So yeah, if you like werewolf stories, definitely give this one a try. But like I said, beware of what happens on the cover. I'm not the biggest fan of zombies myself. I mean, I do like to watch the movies sometimes. I mean, to me, zombies are kind of limited as far as what you can do with them. I mean, vampires, werewolves, dragons especially, or fae. Most of these creatures on this list, there's a lot of different things you can do with them. They have human traits. But with zombies, it's pretty much just, they're mindless and they're rotting and they eat people or they just eat brains. Yeah, that's about how complex they get. Either they eat brains or they eat whole flesh. They move slow or they move fast, and that's pretty much it. And there can be varying stories on where they came about. A lot of people just say, "Oh, they're just here," whatever. But anyway, the zombie book that I'm going to talk about today is Hollowland by Amanda Hocking. Hollowland is a post-apocalyptic zombie story where after the initial outbreak has already started, a single girl gets rescued. Well, should I say, escapes a facility that's being controlled by zombies. And the story is about her journey across the country that she takes with a rock star and a few other survivors that she comes across. And then she finally ends up in a facility where her brother's being held. And then it becomes a story to rescue her brother. Pretty interesting story. Kind of generic zombie story, but if you're into YA zombie stories, this one may be for you. For Ghost, that was obvious for me. I chose the book I most recently read. It was Hell House by Richard Matheson. And I already did a review on this one, give you a brief synopsis on that, but I'll give you a brief synopsis here again. Basically, it's about 4 people that go into a house, and there's a scientist and 2 mediums, and the scientist's wife. They all go in trying to prove whether or not life after death exists. That's what they're supposed to do, but they all had their own agenda. Scientists out to prove that ghosts are merely, electromagnetic energy that are residual from people left over, while the mediums are trying to prove that spirits are actually real. And it's a pretty good book. It is pretty gory. It is kind of scary if you do have a belief of ghosts and all that stuff, and some pretty horrific things happen in it. It is kind of gory, so if that kind of thing interests you, if you want a book with gore in it and kind of scary, then definitely check out Hell House. The Spellcaster, the witch or wizard or sorcerer, however you want to say it. Many different words for it, and there's a lot of different books I could have chosen for this, going back from my olden days of reading high fantasy like the Dragonlance novels and all those TSR novels, and of course I read Harry Potter in this, but the ones I want to bring up for this particular tag will be the Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. Yes, Kane Chronicles deals with the Egyptian mythology and all those gods, and Egyptian mythology was very laced with magic, so of course the main characters in those stories are magic users. So it centers around magic. And it's definitely a series I would recommend. Maybe not quite as good as his Greek mythology series, but still a pretty good series nonetheless. So my casters are from the Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. The Fae, more commonly known as fairies. It actually encompasses a very large variety of different creatures, such as fairies or gnolls, gnomes, heavily rooted in Irish mythology as well as Norse mythology, actually. But for this particular Fae, I'm going to go with the more traditional fairies. I'm going to go with the story of Wondrous Strange by Leslie Livingston. Wondrous Strange is about a 16-year-old girl living in New York City who's a up-and-coming actress, and she meets a boy, of course. But this boy happens to be a changeling, a human who was abducted at early age and taken into the world of the Fae, and is actually raised by King Oberyn, yes, the Lord of Winter. See, most of the fairy tales that were written were meant to scare children and get them to behave a certain way, and threatening them with being taken away by mythical creatures in the middle of the night was a good way to scare them back then. So Wondrous Strange, it was kind of written with that particular aspect of fairy tales in mind. But if you want to read a story that's actually well researched and actually is a pretty good an accurate take on what the Fae were, definitely give Wondrous Strange a try. It is a trilogy, so it's 3 books if you want to do that, But go ahead and read the first one. I would personally recommend reading the first one at least, see if you like it. But yes, the book I choose for the Fae is Wondrous Strange by Leslie Livingston. Yes, demons, those pesky little spawns of hell that like to take possession of people, cause havoc, fight with all things holy, and basically just be all around bad, evil creatures that wreak a lot of havoc. For demon, I chose Heck, Where the Bad Kids Go by David E. Bassier. Hope I said that at least somewhat right. Heck is a series of books based around 2 children, brother and a sister, who end up accidentally dying and go to the magical realm of Heck, where bad kids go when they die. The 2 children end up having to go to school under the principal Beelzebub. Yes, there are a lot of puns in that story, which is probably to put the reader through heck. But anyway, there's different types of demons. One thing I found amusing about this story is that the demons, they would have to put the really young children to bed, the ones that died when they were like 3, 4, or 5. They put the children to bed, but they put on very scary costumes when they do that. So it's funny. It's just even demons still have to put on scary costumes to try and scare children. But yeah, it is a pretty funny story. It is a pretty good children's book, but I think adults would like it too. So if you'd like to get a little bit more juvenile, a little bit safer view of the 9 Circles of Hell, then go ahead and read Heck in its series, The 9 Circles of Heck. For angels, I chose the book Good Intentions by Elliot Kay. And to be fair, I could have easily chosen this one for demon also. I could have chosen it for a lot of things. Vampire, werewolves, ghosts, I mean, a lot of different things. But I chose it for angel. The three main characters, one's a human, and one's a demon, a succubus to be precise, and the third is an angel. And I did do a review of Good Intentions before. You can check that out. Should go to my channel. You should be able to find that somewhere. But anyway, it's basically about a guy named Alex who stumbles across a ritual that some people are performing, and they're performing it on a succubus and an angel. And Alex ends up disturbing the ritual, and he ends up becoming bonded to the demon and the angel. It's a pretty cool story. It is very comparable to Twilight. It's kind of Twilight for guys. I did call it that once, but it is a pretty good, interesting read. It is it is rather kind of sexual, so just be warned of that if you do want to check it out. But if you like supernatural stuff, sex, violence, that type of stuff, and like guy stories, or even if you don't like guy stories, this one is still pretty good. Definitely check it out. This was the hardest one to find a book about. I do not seem to like to read about aliens at all. I mean, I know there are a lot of books about aliens out there, but I don't seem to have read any of them. I did have to sort of go into my stuff, my not safe for work stuff, and I did find one there, but I decided I would go with a little bit of a stretch here. The series of Pendragon, about a boy named Bobby Pendragon who ends up traveling to all sorts of different worlds. And these different worlds, well, technically he's the alien on them, but every time somebody goes to a different place, technically they are aliens. Pendragon, yeah, it's a fairly good series. I've only read the first two books in it, but I think some people would like it. It deals with, traveling to different worlds, different dimensions, and different time periods. Bobby, he's from basically, our Earth, our time right now, and he travels around with, this one warrior woman from another world, and he meets several other people. It's fairly interesting. You might want to give it a try, at least get a synopsis of it on Amazon and see if it is there, but that is my pick for Alien. Yes, so metahumans, also known as people with superpowers, superheroes, superpowered people, people with extraordinary abilities. I just call them metahumans for short. Superpowered human, I chose a book that has a person on it that, I don't know, this might be a little bit more construed as magic rather than a supernatural ability or a superpower. But I chose the story of Callous Rose by Mark Tufo. Now, on the surface, when you first start to read it, you might be thinking, well, it's basically a poor man's Carrie, and it does kind of invite comparison to Carrie. It is about a girl named Callous Rose who has the ability to control people. They don't really reveal how exactly she does this until the end, so I won't spoil that. And she doesn't really have a crazy mother, though. Her parents end up dying at a very young age, primarily because of something she does. But they end up dying when she's very young, and she ends up going through the foster care system, which it probably is even worse than being raised by a crazy mother. The story is pretty well written. It is a bit predictable. I mean, you could probably guess some of the elements that are in it. She meets a boy who happens to play football, and there's mean girls there. Yeah, a lot of the typical generic stuff, but it is pretty well written, and you do sort of empathize with this girl at the same time, kind of hate her. So it's not quite like Carrie, although still similar. But if it sounds interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. I think most people should find it interesting, at least. And that is my Creatures of the Night book tag. Hope you enjoyed that. And as always, I'll leave my pertinent contact information down below in the abyss. And if you have any other suggestions on what you'd like to see in future videos, any questions, or any ideas for mythology time, go ahead and leave that in the comments. So please comment, rate, subscribe, you know the drill. And until next time, this is I.S. Anderson telling everybody, make your lives grand, and have a good day. Thank you very much.